My relationship with FromSoftware games has always been complicated, and I'm sure a lot of people are in the same boat. It usually starts with me being completely overwhelmed and utterly confused by not the game's difficulty, that I got used to it after 10 years, but by the game's systems. I see lots of words and numbers I don't understand, and I want answers immediately. Without them, I cannot move forward without feeling sick to my stomach. I'm honestly quite nervous before starting these games because even though I love RPGs, I do have my limits when it comes to complexity, and I do find some games to be so complex that they stop actually being fun for me. But that's not the case with FromSoftware games. Once I finally have a grasp on the mechanics, what I end up with is some of the most satisfying, thrilling, and rewarding experiences out there. And the Demon's Souls remake is no different. In fact, it quickly became one of my favorite Souls games, and it's even fighting Bloodborne for the #1 spot in my heart. But playing this game brought up a couple of questions in my head. Why do I even enjoy this? And most importantly, what makes me overcome the initial frustration? Well, let me tell you about my experience with Demon's Souls and how it achieves something very few games do. Alright, so I never played the original Demon's Souls, so I'm just going to talk about it as if it was the newest entry. Also, I know this remake was done by Bluepoint Games, but the design is purely FromSoftware. So when you boot up the game, you're tasked with creating a character. You can choose between several classes and customize your character's face. This is pretty standard RPG stuff, but it's surprisingly fleshed out, especially when I didn't see my guy's face for the whole entire game. I picked the Knight class, played through the tutorial section, and died in mere seconds with the first boss. I was like, alright, fair enough, this feels like home. But then I ended up in this place called the Nexus, this in-between world where you can interact with NPCs you meet throughout your journey, and that's when I started to get scared. Because when I opened up the menus, I found quite an impressive amount of character and weapon stats I didn't totally understand at first. I saw something called World Tendency, and to make things worse, I realized that I was now a ghost and that half of my health bar had magically disappeared. The game is basically filled with systems that left me scratching my head in the first 2 hours. So I did what I usually do when playing Souls games. So before you go into the comment section to tell me that I'm missing out on something by going to the wikis and spoiling some of the surprises, no. Because that's how I enjoy playing these games. That's how my brain works. I want to have some form of understanding of this world that I'm exploring. I want to know why I'm doing certain things and why I shouldn't do certain things. Obviously, I'm not looking up at a detailed walkthrough as I play the game. I still want to keep most of the surprises, but since Demon's Souls is just as unforgiving as the other Souls games, one mistake can ruin the build you were going for. In fact, my New Game Plus is pretty much worthless at the moment because of something I didn't do at the end of my first playthrough. Which is why I go to wikis and Reddit. For the systems, the stats, the weapons, the items, all that stuff, I want to know what's up. And that's actually part of the experience and part of what I like about these games. It's not just about the game itself, but it's about the sense of community that goes along with it. Going online to read about certain items I should get, certain weapons I should keep an eye on, and characters I should try to rescue is actually part of the fun for me. It reminds me of the times I would chat with my pals during lunch break in the high school cafeteria to share strategies, places to farm, and secrets. To me, it's like going to the movies. Yes, I go for the films, but without the candy, the overpriced popcorn, and the crappy theater seats, it would not be the same. So I rushed towards the wiki and spent 3 hours studying the game and its mechanics like a madman at 3 in the morning. But once I got back to the game the next day, I felt like my eyes were finally open and was able to appreciate it for what it truly is. And that's when I started having fun. It clicked. Well, almost. Much like all the other Souls games, there was still a couple of things that needed to happen before getting to that nirvana moment where the game would finally start to grow on me. First off, the world has to grab my attention. One of the reasons why I wasn't the biggest fan of Sekiro, for instance, was not because of the gameplay, but because of the world itself and its design. Even though it was really well made, for some reason the fantasy Japanese setting wasn't my cup of tea. Weirdly enough, I loved Okami and loved the recent DLC for Ghost of Tsushima, but I don't know. The art direction for Sekiro felt a bit flat to me, especially when compared to Bloodborne, which is still the greatest showcase of world building and art direction I've ever seen. And Demon Souls is up there as well. This game is gorgeous. The architecture alone is breathtaking. From the intimidating Boletaria Palace to the filthy undergrounds of the Swamp of Sorrow or the chilling Prison of Hope, Demon Souls is an absolute feast for the eyes. The creature design, the lighting, the various particle effects, the armor sets, the engravings in the walls, the decorations, there's just a crazy attention to detail in every single aspect of this world. And everything is deeply rooted in the game's lore. Talking about the lore, FromSoftware games are known to have very cryptic stories with a high emphasis on environmental storytelling. Some NPCs will give you parts of the mythos, but for the rest, you've got to look around and piece things together by yourself. The items and weapons also have descriptions that give some background information. But even then, a lot of it is ambiguous by design, and I love that. It gives the world this aura of mystery and makes exploration a narrative tool to some extent, which is brilliant. Take Stonefang Tunnel. This place used to be an excavation site under the control of King Allant. The miners were so committed to their work that even when the demonic fog approached, they remained in the tunnels to mindlessly continue digging. Some rumors also talk about a temple sitting underneath the mines devoted to a fire demon whose flames are said to be the very essence from which blacksmithing was begun. And if you kill that demon and bring his soul back to this blacksmith, he can forge special weapons for you. But the crazy thing about all this is that it's never explicitly told to the player. You've got to figure it out by yourself, listen carefully to every details given by NPCs, or look it up online. And the game does this very often. For example, if you save this guy in the Upper Latria, he'll go into the Nexus and might kill some of the NPCs there. But the game never tells you that. And some spells can be entirely missed if you decide to consume one of the demon souls instead of bringing it to that specific character in that specific area at this particular moment. I've always been very intimidated by that part of those games, which is why I like to look it up online. It gives me micro objectives, things I want to accomplish or prevent. That's how I like to play those games. But obviously, all of this would not matter if the gameplay didn't grab me, and there are two specific moments that need to happen in every FromSoftware games for me to finally conquer the initial fear. Until these moments happen, I cannot fully enjoy the game. The first one has got to do with level design. If you're not familiar with the Souls series, basically you have this hub world. In Demon Souls, it's the Nexus, and Bloodborne, the Hunter's Dreams, you get the idea. From that location, you can access a series of archstones, bonfires, or lamps, which basically divide the worlds into different levels. And those levels are usually built like mazes with a boss at the other end. That type of level design can be extremely intimidating for newcomers, but FromSoftware uses a very simple but clever trick: shortcuts. The great thing about these is that not only do they make your journey much easier by providing you quick ways to move around the level, but they also help the player build a mental map of the area. When you first open up that gate in Boletaria Palace to only realize that you went back to the very beginning of the level, suddenly the world feels much smaller and far less overwhelming. At some point, every level will be engraved into your brain and you'll be able to explore without feeling completely lost. And once that happens, it feels great. Plus, every time you die, you go back to the very beginning of the level, so you'll have more than enough time to memorize the different layouts. Finally, there's one last thing I needed to do before falling in love with Demon Souls, and that thing was beating the first boss, which for me wasn't Phalanx, this weird blob-looking thing vulnerable to fire that isn't that hard to beat. No, my first encounter where I truly struggled wasn't even an actual boss, but this guy. The Red-Eye Knight guarding the mausoleum. I even managed to kill the Tower Knight before killing him. For some reason, I could not beat this particular enemy. But what's great about this game is that even when you're stuck somewhere, you can simply move to another level, collect some souls, level up your characters, and go back to previous unfinished business. Which I did. I leveled up my strength and my stamina, brought a lighter armor set to the fight, and finally beat the Red-Eye Knight. And even if I didn't have the key I needed to open the door he was guarding, the feeling of satisfaction I got once I finally destroyed him was amazing. It was at that very moment that I knew I was going to love Demon Souls, that I was going to spend hours and hours with it. Overcoming these art battles sprinkled throughout the entire game can be a frustrating experience, but beating those tough enemies will give you the biggest adrenaline rush you can get in video games. And trust me, you quickly become addicted to that feeling. Demon's Souls is truly fantastic. It's a game that sticks with you. Even when you put the controller down, you think about it. You think about things you could have done better, places you should have avoided, souls you shouldn't have consumed, and so much more. When I finished Demon's Souls, I was exhausted. I felt like my body had gone through war and my heart was still beating much faster than it should for a video game. But in the end, there's absolutely no other franchise or whatever you want to call the Souls series that even remotely comes close to the feeling of accomplishment you get when slaying the final bosses. The joy in the end far surpasses the pain to the point where you eventually forget that you once tried to throw your TV out the window. You don't beat Demon's Souls or the other FromSoftware games, you triumph over them. Thank you guys for watching my video on Demon's Souls, I hope you enjoyed it. What a great game. I know a lot of you don't have access to a PS5 yet, which is very unfortunate, but once you finally manage to get your hands on it, you've got to give Demon's Souls a chance. At the moment, it's easily up there as a Game of the Year contender for me. We got some really cool things coming up soon. There's the Game Awards, which I'm sure will have plenty of surprises to cover on the channel, and then Cyberpunk 2077 comes out. Unfortunately, I was not able to get my hands on a review copy, but I'll still do the videos I had in mind, obviously. They're just going to be a bit late. So that's pretty much it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you guys later.